What's up, rad people? A few of you have been asking to see some montages of my original creepypastas, and that's a great idea. So prepare for nearly an entire hour of original scary stories. So let's get to it. I'm next. All anyone is talking about are the local murders, or as the media is reporting, butcherings. There have been 3 so far, and the police have no leads. If that wasn't scary enough, I have something to be even more afraid of. Each victim looks alike, and I fit in with them. Female, dark brown hair, mid-30s, lives alone. I tried to deny the link, but the victim they found this morning really cemented my suspicion. How am I possibly to sleep at night knowing at any moment I could be next? I immediately called the police in a fit of fear this morning, and you know what they offered me? Absolutely nothing. They said I'm being paranoid and there's no evidence to support the idea that I could be a target. My persistence got me nothing but a headache out of frustration. I called off work for the 2nd day in a row. If this masked killer hasn't spotted me yet, I don't want to give them the chance. I spend my days glued to my computer, reading the steady flow of frivolous updates. Nothing. No one knows a damned thing. They all keep babbling on about how the killer takes the victim's left eyeball as some trophy, or at least that's what they think since each girl has been missing one. I know I'm next. I can feel it in my gut and in my bones. No one sees the connection but me. How can an entire police department and news crew be so oblivious to the trend? I haven't been to work in a week. A few coworkers have left voicemails expressing concern, but I can't risk answering my phone. What if the killer is calling random women and he can tell by the sound of my voice that I know I'm doomed? No way I'm giving them a clue to where I'm at. I've barely slept since the 3rd murder. The fact that there hasn't been another body discovered yet feeds into my idea that I'm his new prey, but he's waiting for me to come out of hiding. I can feel him closing in on me. Wherever I look, I know he's just around the corner, just out of my sight, lurking in the shadows. I don't understand why he's toying with me for so long. Why am I different from the rest? Well, you know what? Forget that. I am different because I'm going to live. I'm going to fight back. So bring it on, tough guy. I'm done waiting for you to make your next move. I'm on the verge of losing my sanity. The worried phone calls have finally stopped and the news reports have begun to dwindle. Everyone on this planet has the attention span of a gnat, and here I am about to make their next headline to refuel their morbid interest. Disgusting, all of them. If only they could experience the agony and hell that I am. Oh god, there's blood everywhere. I'm freaking out. I don't know how they did it, but I woke up in the middle of the night to creaking floorboards outside my bedroom door, and when I swung the door open, there was dry blood smeared down the hallway leading into the bathroom. The place is a mess. How did I sleep through this? Where are they hiding? The blood was just the beginning. Today I found a Ziploc baggie in the freezer that I don't remember placing in there. It contained what I can only assume is the missing eyeballs of the 3 girls, and I'm losing it. I have to call someone, but I don't know who to call. No. I can't call anyone. I can't tell anyone what I found because they won't believe me. They'll think I'm crazy. But I'm not. I'm not crazy. They have to believe me. I wrote down everything. They'll see how I've documented it all in the journal, so it can't be me. They won't think I did this. They'll understand that the killer is toying with me. Or maybe they're setting me up. That's it. They're setting me up to take the blame so that they can go back to living their normal, happy life without fear of someone finding out what they've done. Crap. What do I do? That's it. I've concluded that the killer must be sneaking into my apartment when I'm sleeping. They've done so the past 2 nights, and I'm sure they'll return again. So I'm going to stay up tonight to catch them. I'll be waiting in the closet when I hear them enter the apartment, and I'll kill them. I'm going to end this tonight. With the body of the killer in this apartment, the police will have to realize that I didn't do this. That I couldn't have murdered all those girls. They'd be the crazy ones to think that I did this with all my proof. So I'll be waiting. I don't have a gun, but I do have a sharp kitchen knife that I can use. As long as I can catch them off guard, I think I can do this. I did it. I got the killer. They returned just like I said they would. As soon as they walked through the door, I slammed the sharp blade into their chest, but they didn't die without a struggle. We ended up on the floor, and before they died, I was stabbed in the chest too. It's been a few days since then, but I haven't gone to the police. I just realized how bad this will all look if I show up with a stab wound and a dead body in my apartment. I can't even go to the hospital without raising suspicion. No one can ever know about this. Maybe since the killer is now dead and since the murders won't continue, I can just dump the body somewhere no one will look. That's it. That sounds like a great plan. I'll do just that and everything will go back to normal. Right? Right. Of course, yes, right. It will. I know it will. It has to. I'm your reporter, Kaylena Orr, with a special announcement. Police have finally found the Bay County clone killer and have reported the murderer as deceased upon arrival. Not much has been released, but from our trusted Bay County news sources, we can confirm it appears to have been the result of a suicide. Next to the body, a journal containing unpublished details about the murders was found, as well as some incriminating evidence within the apartment. We'll have more updates for you at 11. Deadly assumption. He found the cold air to be stifling as he stood outside the illuminated storefront, eyeing the people passing by. Crowds made him uncomfortable, but they also gave him the perfect chance to scout out his next unsuspecting victim. Scanning the crowd, his eyes landed on a young woman wearing a knitted red scarf. Something about the red hue sparked an interest in him, and whoever was unlucky enough to be wearing the color in his presence gained his interest. Something they would never ever want, as it almost always resulted in their brutal death. Extending his clipboard, he approached her with a tight-lipped smile.
Hello there. I was wondering if you'd be interested in signing a petition to save our forest.
The words were well rehearsed, but he couldn't contain his nerves and spoke while tugging at his blonde strands. He had absolutely no interest in preserving Mother Nature. This was his tactic to gain the names and addresses of those he planned on adding to his collection. The girl, noticing his shaggy yellow tresses, responded with a smile and nod. Sure thing. Writing down her information, the giddiness began to creep into him. The icy air was no longer heavy with the anxiousness of finding his next prey. It was now invigorating with the smell of a hunt.
Thank you for joining our fight. Have a nice night.
She returned the clipboard and continued to walk home. She didn't notice the second set of footsteps until she turned down a barren street, barely lit enough to see the sidewalk under her own feet. The distinct crunch of ice under boots continued when she skipped a step to check the distance between them without turning around. They were a faint patter, so she picked up her pace. Breathing in the bitter cold air quickly felt like fire, but the increased rhythm of the second pair of feet motivated her to withstand the pain. While turning onto her street, she glanced over her shoulder and spotted the lanky silhouette of a man. From lack of light, she couldn't see his face, but she got this overwhelming feeling it was the same man from minutes before. Turning her gaze forward, she began to sprint towards her home. It was when she reached her front gate that she realized the ominous footsteps could no longer be heard. Snapping around and pressing her back up against the door, she was met with a silent street and no one in sight. Walking inside, she locked the door behind her and immediately pounced onto her bed, pulling the covers over her. He had begun to follow her for the thrill of the stalk, and when she quickened her pace, so did his heartbeat.
This is my favorite part.
When his victim was paranoid by his presence was when he felt the most powerful. But when he saw her look over her shoulder, he fell back. The chase was only for a little bit of fun. He already had her address. He waited a couple of hours till he figured she would have fallen asleep before he entered her home through an unlocked bathroom window. Giving the victim enough time to feel safe before attacking was his preferred method. He found their sense of false security to be comical and was part of the process he would remember fondly for each victim. Without a sound, he crept through her house and into her bedroom, watching the lump under the comforter rise and fall with her calm breaths. He relished in the thought of what was to come next. Only he didn't know his plan this time had a fatal flaw. He expected she was like his typical victim, innocent and unsuspecting. What he didn't pick up on, probably because he was so self-centered and preoccupied with nerves, was that she had been scoping the crowd out as well, and she had spotted him first. When he went to pull back the covers, he was met with her wild grin and small hands clutching a sharpened knife. Stepping back from shock, she leaped into the air and plunged the blade into his heart with a menacing giggle. As he laid there dying, she clipped off a few strands of his golden locks, dipped a white ribbon into the growing pool of his blood, and tied the hair together with it in a sadistic bow. His eyes followed her as she reached into her closet, pulling out an old wooden box and placing his hair into it like a prized trophy. His eyes widened when he saw her closet was filled with similar boxes. Struggling to stave off the succumbing darkness, their eyes met. Didn't anyone ever tell you? Assumptions can be deadly. secret admirer. About 3 years ago, I had a secret admirer, but it ended up being a lot more malicious than it sounds. I had just gone through a pretty bad breakup a few weeks before and was feeling pretty lousy. The last thing I wanted to do was to look at all the pink heart decorations and DIY date ideas on Facebook. A few weeks before Valentine's Day, I get to work to find a bouquet of roses sitting on my desk. Assuming someone must have delivered them to the wrong cubicle, I checked the card right away. I was perplexed. All it said was, "Know that I'm always thinking about you." There was no further identification on the roses. I couldn't even find the company they were sent from to call and ask about the sender. So I took it for what it was, a cute gesture probably by a friend or family member to make me feel better. And it did. The next day, I arrived to work to a similar scene, but this time, it was a box of strawberries. Not assuming that they were delivered by mistake this time, I checked the card for a sender's name. The card read, "Know that you're special to me." Again, no name was given. That didn't really seem like something a friend would say though. For the first time in my life, I thought I had a secret admirer. I'm not going to lie, I found the idea very cute. A few people in the office began to ask me questions, and we soon began to speculate who it could be. We all agreed it had to have been someone that worked with us, since there wasn't a delivery company logo on either gift. The next day, I walked into work half anticipating a new surprise, and sure enough, there was a tiny box waiting for me. Inside was a pair of earrings I had said I wanted a few months ago, and written on the card was, "Know that I love you more than anyone else could." My secret admirer didn't feel so secret now. It had to have been my ex-boyfriend. He was the only one I had ever mentioned the earrings to. I went through the day with mixed emotions. I thought the gifts were sweet, but I didn't like that they were out of the blue. We hadn't spoken since we broke up, and this felt like an odd way to ask for a reconciliation. I texted him asking to talk later after work. I got a response, but it wasn't one I was expecting. He replied back, "Sure, about what?" I didn't know what to make about that. Was he trying to play coy? I was swamped with the day's tasks, so I quickly replied back, "Us," and to meet at my place around 7. After work, I got home and prepared dinner for me and him. I figured since he had done so many romantic gestures, tonight was my turn. We had a nice time, talking about what went wrong in our relationship and how we would change now that we've had some time to think apart. After we expressed we both wanted to be in a relationship again, he asked what inspired me to reach out to him like that. Confused and taken off guard, I told him it was the thoughtful gifts he had been surprising me with. He had no clue what I was talking about. I was a bit freaked out considering the last gift was so personal, but he got my mind off of it by saying he was grateful for the mistake, and our conversation continued onto a different topic. The next day, I found a Valentine's Day card on my desk. Inside, written in hasty handwriting, "Know that I'm always watching you." That freaked me out. I was too afraid to tell anyone since I felt like the person must have been in the office. So I played it cool until my lunch break when I decided to leave. I had every intention of going to the police now with this threat. When I got in my car, there was a white box placed on my passenger seat. I nearly had a heart attack when I saw it, whipping around to check my back seat for someone hiding. My relief was instant and fleeting. Trembling, I removed the lid. Inside was a DVD with the words, "Know that you're mine. Love always, your secret admirer." I went straight to the police station without touching it, hoping there might be some evidence left behind, but there wasn't any. When they played the DVD, there were clips of me over a 5-year span, walking my dog, going to work, the grocery store, out on dates, and even in my own house. My secret admirer had been stalking me for years. The police had me and my boyfriend stay at a hotel with them on guard while they tried to track the stalker down. They said they had a lead on a temp worker the office had hired recently, as he hadn't shown up for work since. On Valentine's Day, after being cooped up in the hotel room for a week, we decided it would be safe to venture down to the hotel's restaurant for a date. It would be a nice distraction from the unnerving situation. The place was pretty crowded and the tables were pushed together to make room for more. Being in a room with so many people actually felt comforting at first. About halfway through the dinner, my boyfriend left to get something from our room. He said it was a little gift he managed to get from the gift shop while I was showering. I instantly felt vulnerable being alone at the table. The room full of people meant that the stalker could be anywhere. After a while, it grew to be too much, so I waved the waiter down so that I could get the bill and return to the room as fast as possible. She arrived minutes later with the check in a small cloth pouch. I nervously asked what was inside, and she told me a man just gave it to her to pass on to me. She said she wasn't sure if it was the guy I was with. Opening the pouch, a bundle of crumpled up tissue came out with an accompanying note. "For you, my Valentine." A speck of red began to seep into the white tissue. I unwrapped it and let out a horrified scream. Inside was a severed ring finger. After locking down the hotel to investigate, they found my boyfriend's body in the bathroom off the lobby. The finger belonged to him. The killer has yet to have been found, but they're pretty certain it was the coworker, as they uncovered a lot of his documents were forged and that the car he left behind and his apartment were all registered in different names. Even after showing me his picture, I couldn't recall ever having a conversation with him or seeing him outside the office. It's been 3 years, and every Valentine's Day, I wait in fear for another surprise gift to show up at my door. Seeing my future. I'm going to start off my story by telling you now that yes, I know I sound paranoid, and that's because I am, but I have good reason to be, and that you'll see why after you hear my story. I was late to the whole Snapchat craze, joining just recently after a night of boredom. I was surprised to have gained a follower almost instantly, as I hadn't told anyone my username yet. I guess that my username must have been sold on one of those sites where people randomly follow a bunch of others in hopes that they follow back. I've seen spam adverts for them all over Instagram and Facebook, and assumed Snapchat had them too. Not thinking much of it, I ignored it, but a few days later while I was at work, I got an alert on my phone that I received a private message from this strange user. Not being able to open Snapchat right away as I'm a cashier, I put it off until I got home that night. Laying in bed, I logged in to find that that person had sent me 2 more private snaps. The first one was a blurry picture. I couldn't really make it out entirely before the 5 seconds were up and it disappeared, but it looked like the camera was pointed at a tile floor while someone was walking. The second picture was also quite blurry, but I could at least make out the location, which was a pretty normal looking bathroom. Well, odd but not creepy, I found myself hesitating to open the next one. After a moment's pause, I clicked on it to see a 3-second video, which was of water running down the bathtub's drain. I sat there confused as to why a stranger felt the need to send me these snaps, so I simply messaged them back a question mark. As I had a long shift that day, I put my phone down and went to sleep. The next morning, I had the day off, so I slept in. When I finally got up to take a shower, something felt off. Almost like I was experiencing deja vu. Even after I finished showering, I couldn't shake the feeling while brushing my teeth. Pondering why I still felt like I was in a sleepy daze, I fixated on the floor. That's when it hit me. The first blurry image from the snap looked incredibly similar to my tiles. Feeling a quick panic, I instantly tried to reassure myself that many people probably have the same flooring. After all, it was generic white subway tiles. Pushing it from my mind, I went about my day as normal as I could. Lounging on the couch, running errands, going to the gym. As I was making dinner, I felt my phone vibrating in my pocket. It was another Snapchat notification. I opened it to be greeted by another 3-second video, filmed by a very shaky hand. It now showed a front door closing. It looked just like mine. Turning around to see my apartment living room, I saw nothing out of the ordinary. At least, nothing that made me think someone else was in my apartment with me. A bit freaked, I called my friend and asked her to come over for dinner. Opening the door for her, I got the same weird feeling I did that morning while getting ready. Throughout the meal, I told her about the weird snaps I'd been receiving, and she thought someone in the same building must be pranking me for fun. Admittedly and foolishly, I was quick to believe her. That explained why the floor and door were the same. Laughing it off, I messaged the person back with a middle finger emoji to be done with it. I didn't get a reply, so I continued on with the rest of my night, falling asleep around 1 a.m. My phone went off once again with a Snapchat notification. Angered by the ongoing prank, I opened it immediately. What was on the screen made my heart race and caused my body to break out in a cold sweat. The snap was a picture of a dead body at the bottom of a dimly lit stairwell. My body, to be exact. It looked like I must have tripped or been pushed, and my head hit the pavement, leaving a puddle of crimson surrounding me. I stayed up the rest of the night paralyzed with fear. I tried messaging back the user, but it no longer showed up on my friends list, and when I searched for the name, no results appeared. I can no longer think this was just a silly little prank. And what's more terrifying, I don't know when it's supposed to happen or if it can be avoided, and I'm too scared to leave my apartment, which doesn't have an elevator. Anonymous Stalker. I've been an avid Snapchat user for the last few years, and it has become part of my daily routine. It's nothing out of the ordinary for me to send and receive a dozen snaps to different people throughout my day at school. One day, when I was walking home from my evening class, I opened the app to watch some stories to make my commute go by faster. After watching a few, a story popped up with only one picture. It was of me walking to class. Now, I know I should have been unnerved by it, but it was from a friend, and that's something we've done in the past. I sent her back a video asking if she wanted to meet up tomorrow for lunch. The next day, I opened my Snapchat while walking to lunch. Having not gotten a reply beforehand, I was surprised to find a snap story from her. Again, it was a single video of me walking to class that very morning. A bit annoyed that she blew me off and yet still posted the story, I chose not to reply back. This single video story of me walking to and from class continued for the rest of the week. With each day, I grew more and more pissed off, but refusing to respond. That is, until yesterday when she shared a video of me in class. A class that she wasn't in. I tried calling her cell phone to put an end to this now creepy game, but it went straight to her voicemail. I met up with a mutual friend that we shared and asked him if he had seen her, which he replied he hadn't since the previous weekend. When I told him she wasn't answering her phone, he told me that maybe her phone had died and to message her on Facebook instead. When I got home from class, I logged onto Facebook to see that she hadn't posted any status updates or comments since that weekend. Something didn't seem right. The next morning, I skipped class, took the bus, and went to her off-campus apartment. Quite frankly, I was surprised her roommate even answered the door because on the way over, my imagination went crazy and I was half expecting to find a murder scene. Apparently, she caught the flu on Monday and decided to go home to recover. For some reason, her roommate didn't think anything of not hearing from her since. When I told her that that didn't make any sense since I was receiving snaps from her, she told me to ask the front office for the home phone number. On my way over to the office, I checked my Snapchat to see if there were any updates. There was one. It was a picture of me talking to her roommate. Completely freaked, I rushed to the office and told them that it was a family emergency and that I needed to call her home right away. The receptionist didn't hesitate or ask any further questions. The line only rang a couple times before her father answered. He told me that she was in fact home with the flu, and when I insisted to speak with her, he handed the phone right over. It was her voice, sniffly and congested sounding, as you would expect. When I told her about all the weird Snapchats I had been receiving and that I demanded to know why and how she was sending them, she went quiet. She told me her phone had been stolen last weekend at a party and that she hadn't been on Snapchat since. Freaked out, I ran back to my dorm and packed my bag. Even if it was just a harmless prank, I no longer felt safe on campus for the weekend. As my Uber pulled up, I got a private Snapchat alert. It was a video of me standing on the curb waiting for the car. I whipped my head around to find a girl standing a few feet away talking on her phone. She didn't look suspicious, so I didn't think it was her, but quickly got in the car anyway. On the way home, I decided to block the Snapchat account. I was tired of being fucked with. This morning, I woke up to a Snapchat message from another friend. It was a picture of my empty dorm room. Something about the picture sent a shiver down my spine. I'm writing this as I'm sitting in the waiting room of the police station waiting to file a report about a possible stalker. I've been too afraid to open Snapchat since. Stuck in a day. My friend was recently killed in a car accident coming home from a graduation party. The wreck was caused by a drunk driver. He was really big into posting on social media, so his mother decided to leave all his accounts up and active for friends and family to look at them when they were missing him. Like many others, I took his unexpected death pretty damn hard. One of the ways I coped with it was by continuing to send him Snapchats throughout the day like I used to. Well, the first couple months were usually snaps about how much I missed him and how angry I was that I survived and that he didn't. I eventually began sending pictures of things I thought were funny or moments I knew he would have liked to have been a part of. Even though I knew he would never see them, it still felt good to share them with his account. This continued throughout the summer and into my first semester of college. But then one night, right after I sent a joke, it showed that it had been opened. Since this was the first time that had ever happened, I was taken aback, but quickly assumed it must have been his mother or sister on his account. I simultaneously felt sorrow for them and embarrassed that they read the dick joke I sent. I didn't send any more snaps over to him for the next few days after that, but one night, while I was taking a break from studying for an upcoming exam, I got a Snapchat notification from his account. It was a weird sight to see his name pop up on my phone after such a long absence. Thinking it was from his family, I opened it, but instead of a message from the family, it was a selfie of him. What threw me off was that it wasn't a memory snap re-uploaded, or a picture of a computer screen of a selfie he took in the past. It looked like he had just taken a picture of himself smiling at the very moment it was sent. It was incredibly unnerving, and I sent a what the fuck in reply before thinking. A few seconds later, someone on his account sent me a smiling emoji. Even if it were his mom, this didn't feel right. So I closed out of the app and returned to preparing for my exam. The next night, the same thing happened again, but with a new selfie. A selfie that also looked like it had just been taken. I chose to ignore it entirely. The night after that, same thing, but this time I noticed something odd that I hadn't before. The picture was taken outside, and in the background was a bonfire. It was now the beginning of December, and it had been snowing since Thanksgiving, but there wasn't any snow on the ground of the picture. I decided to message back and asked when this was taken. The account said tonight with a confused-faced emoji. This pissed me off. Whoever got a hold of his account was mocking his death or trying to torment me. I told them to fuck off. The reply I got startled me. It was a video of him giving the camera the finger, telling me to stop being an ass. It was his voice, his face, his hand, and in the background, people celebrating around a fire. I didn't know what to think. How could this video exist and I had never seen it before? Or was it just taken and that would mean he's alive somehow? But I was there the night of the accident. I saw him in the casket at his funeral. He was dead. There was no denying that. I had to find out who was using his Snapchat so that I could stop them from hurting his family by doing this. Every question I asked was met with a sarcastic response, just like he would. It felt like I was talking to him. I didn't know whether to cry or to be angry. It was beginning to become hard to convince myself that this wasn't really him talking. Eventually, our conversation turned into catching up. I didn't care if this was some asshole pretending to be him. It just felt good feeling like I had my friend back. But then something he said stuck out to me. He started talking about how he wanted to ask out Mandy before it was too late. No one else knew he had a thing for Mandy but me. He didn't even talk about it to me until the night before he died. When I asked him what he meant by too late, he answered with before she moves out of state to attend university. I sat there confused on what to do next. If no one else knew about his feelings for her, and he thinks that she hasn't moved away yet, does that mean this is really him? Typing out the message, my fingers felt like they were encased in cement. What day is it? He replied, it's Friday. I asked him the day. He said the 12th. I asked him the month. He told me to stop being an idiot, but answered, obviously May. I couldn't take this anymore. I demanded he send me a video standing in front of a mirror saying the date. He accused me of being drunk, but agreed. It was really him. And then he sent me a video asking me why I was acting so weird and when I was going to finally show up to the party. I told him May 12th was the night that he died, and that I was the one responsible for his death. There's an expression my grandma always used to tell me when I was young. Nothing good ever happens after 2 a.m. At that age, and even through my teens, I assumed the point of her saying this was just to keep me from being up to no good. It wasn't until recently that I found out the true meaning of her words. I was in the campus library with a few classmates for what was supposed to be a study group, but really was just an excuse to chill with one another. The conversation started off with a typical complaining about how unfair so-and-so's professor was with their paper grading, and then transitioned to our usual gossip about the rumors we had heard being passed around that week. All totally super normal stuff, until we reached one rumor about a classmate who hadn't shown up to class the last couple of days. Apparently, she went to go grab a 2 a.m. snack at a convenience store and didn't come back. Her roommate reported her absence to the school, but hasn't heard anything back from them. Her car hasn't turned up either, leaving some students to speculate she is just staying off campus and forgot to mention it to her roommate. This story has continued to stick with me all week, hanging over my head like a dark cloud. Of course, with each passing day, more rumors spring up, the next one more creepy than the last. The newest contribution to the story is a chain email spreading like wildfire across the student body. The email is just a single link that leads to a wiki page of a long-forgotten local urban legend. What this page describes chills me down to my bones. According to the wiki page, the urban legend goes by the name of the shadowy figure of Forest Lake Road and describes a story reported by several eyewitness accounts through the years. While driving around 2 a.m., the driver pulls up to the only red light on the long stretch of road. The radio picks up static and they report the sudden feeling of not being alone even though the road is desolated at the time. They continue their drive, but the feeling and radio static remain. Then each report mentions the appearance of what seemed to be a shadowy figure on the side of the road. As one account stated, looking at the shadow invoked a feeling similar to a child being afraid of the dark. The figure kept reappearing in different spots alongside the road, each time appearing more corporeal and detailed to the point where it resembled a tall man wearing a gray trench coat and with no distinguishable facial features. The accounts conclude with the figure vanishing as suddenly as he appeared. The wiki page then goes on to state that, coincidentally, this stretch of road has also been the location of the last known spotting of 5 different university students over the course of 50 years. A number not frequent enough to spark public concern, but a number odd enough in itself. The 5 missing students even share eerily similar stories in that they were all last seen driving by themselves on the same stretch of road around 2 a.m. and were never seen again, nor were their cars ever found. The cases have been chalked up to runaways, thus not resulting in much of a police investigation. With the disappearance of the now 6 students from this university connected somehow to the shadowy figure of Forest Lake Road, I guess what my grandmother used to say is true. Nothing good happens after 2 a.m. My son is so special. He was the sweetest little boy you could ever wish for. He didn't even cry as an infant, making me the envy of all the sleepless moms in the neighborhood. As he transitioned into adolescence, he didn't hit it off with other kids his own age, but he stayed close by my side, always up for spending the day together, watching TV, helping around the house, or running errands. Again, making me the target for jealous glances from moms stressed out by their angsty teens. While everyone else was getting into trouble for underage drinking, my kind-spirited son was reading books in his room. His demeanor remained gentle into adulthood, so I worried when he told me he wanted to move to Hollywood to pursue his dream of becoming an actor. While I was, of course, heartbroken he was leaving me, I couldn't be more proud of him for going after something he's wanted for so very long. He would always recite lines from his favorite movies or reenact scenes for me from the book he was reading at the time. Yes, my son was special and the world deserved to see him shine. That's why I was crushed when he was rejected audition after audition, his enthusiasm slowly dimming with each cold no. Why couldn't others see what I see in him? 2 years into his move, I knew he wanted to give in and come back to me. He was defeated, and I knew bitterness was soon to set in. But then, I got the phone call I had been waiting for. While working a shift at the diner, my son met a man and the two began discussing an important role he had created. He thought my son would be perfect for it. The character was larger than life, and he promised it would be timeless. Oh, happy day, my son was going to get his time in the spotlight. Hearing my son rant about how excited he was made my heart fill with joy. I asked when they were going to start the project and he quickly responded that they already had and he would be able to tell me more details later because they had to go finish. Before he hung up, he told me he was going to make me proud with his performance. A few weeks later, with minimal details being released, my son called me to finally reveal the entire plot of the project. He told me to turn on the TV into a certain channel. On the screen was a man sitting behind a desk, his brows furrowed in anguish. It was a breaking news bulletin. A string of murders were tied together. Hollywood had a serial killer unlike any they had ever seen before. They targeted anyone and everyone, leaving cryptic messages at the crime scene. The messages were cracked and found to be a list of characters. They released a sketch of the man they were looking for. It was my son. Tears fell down my cheek as I stared at the screen. My son was anxiously waiting for my response. He was right. I was so proud. He made his dreams come true. He was now famous. I always knew my son was special. What would you do if you found yourself all alone? Not just sitting by yourself, but truly and utterly alone, with no living person in sight. What might just be a hypothetical question for you is something I lived through, and I have no idea how or why it happened. I know this isn't going to make any sense to you, so let me backtrack and tell you everything I remember. Boarding call began at 10:13 p.m. and I was the last group to be seated. It was a full plane from JFK to LAX with no empty seats. Everyone settled in sleepily, eager to take off and presumably sleep throughout the flight. We took off without a hitch and the flight was just as boring as it always is. But about halfway through, I woke up and had to use the restroom. As I was making my way down the narrow aisle, I noticed everyone was in deep slumber. While to be expected, it felt eerie. The feeling didn't last long after I got back into my seat and drifted off again. I woke up to a flight attendant shaking my shoulder. Apparently I slept through the landing and subsequent shuffle of passengers exiting the plane. I was the last flyer to grab my overhead bag and walk down the tunnel. There were a handful of others I could see walking in front of me in the distance, and a couple flight attendants remaining behind to complete post-flight tasks. As I got closer to the airport entrance, I noticed it suddenly got incredibly quiet. It was so noticeable, I thought my eardrums were having a delayed reaction to the pressure change. But as I reached the end of the tunnel, I realized that wasn't the case. The airport was deserted. It hadn't taken me more than 30 seconds to walk the distance of the tunnel. There was no way those people in front of me could have walked through the airport in that short amount of time. The shock of the sight left me dumbfounded for a few steps. I walked to the nearby service desk and still didn't see anyone. I called out a few times at a polite level, still thinking there was sure to be a rational explanation for this. After all, it was 3 in the morning. Maybe this was a normally dead time in the airport, and maybe I took longer than I thought to walk the tunnel, and maybe the couple employees happened to be in the bathroom or just out of sight. When no one responded, I began to yell. I no longer cared if I looked silly. In fact, I welcomed the embarrassment because seeing someone would bring relief. I dropped my bag and ran to the bathroom. At first, I called out from the doorway, but it ended with me banging in the doors of every single stall. Not a single person. I ran back out to the gate I exited from, screaming for help at this point. That's when I noticed the luggage. Abandoned suitcases were scattered about, like someone was in the middle of carrying them and fell to the ground mid-step. The thought sent a sharp shiver to travel through my body. As I ran down the tunnel, tears rimmed my eyes. I was fucking terrified. I burst into the plane and found no one. I looked behind every seat, hoping to find someone hiding, hoping this was a twisted prank and it would all be over soon. I yanked open the bathroom door. I peered into the open cockpit. There was no one there either. How could everyone disappear? I was in shock. I was racking my brain, trying to once again justify what was happening. Maybe I slept longer than I thought, or maybe I was still dreaming. Whatever was happening, I knew one thing was for sure. Everyone was gone, and no amount of yelling and running was going to change that. A strange feeling washed over me. It was like a primal fear. It felt like I had swallowed an entire can of seltzer water and it was expanding in my stomach. Even though my body felt weak and was clammy, I continued to walk to the elevator. The ding of its arrival created a deafening echo. Almost like my body was operating from memory, I pressed the button for the parking garage level where I parked my car. 1. Ding. 2. Ding. 3. Ding. Then I heard it. A faint, screeching noise. It was a car. As the thought registered in my brain, the elevator doors opened. I couldn't believe my eyes. There were people. A couple were waiting for the elevator I was on, and some were loading their luggage into their car, going about like nothing had happened. I was so happy I started laughing, no doubt scaring the confused bystanders. Feeling a wave of relief wash over me, I didn't even think to ask them if they had noticed it. I was in a rush to get in my car and home as fast as possible. My sense of security increased with each person and moving car I passed on the way. I wasn't crazy, and I was here. I went home and told my husband everything, numerous times over, with every detail I could recall. He insisted I must have been in a sleepwalking state or deliriously tired from my trip. At one point, he was even convinced I must have forgotten I took a sleeping pill and was out of it for a few minutes after waking up. But I know that's not what happened. I know I did not dream it. Something happened in that airport. I don't know why it happened or how it happened or why and how it fixed itself, but for those 28 minutes, I was the only living being around. And it's a feeling I never want to experience again. I have a creepy story I want to share with you. After work, I go home to my apartment and watch Netflix every night. A few months ago, I started noticing series and movies listed under the recently watched category that I didn't recall selecting. I figured it was just some glitch and ignored it. Then one day after work, I intended to resume an episode where I left off the night before. But when I hit play, an episode further down the series began to play. I looked through the other episodes and each was listed as having been watched all the way through. This is when I suspected something more than a glitch was causing this. I had split up from my boyfriend the month beforehand and hadn't changed my Netflix login since. Thinking he was still using my account and wanting to save myself from the headache of directly asking him, I went on the computer and revoked access to all devices and changed the password. I figured that would do the speaking for me. When I got home the next night, I was shocked to see the series I was in the middle of showed I had completed it. Maybe he had my email password too and was able to still get access. If not, then there had to be some technical explanation. I contacted Netflix support to try to get to the bottom of this. I filled in the agent on what was happening and after 30 minutes of waiting, was told my account was appearing normal on their end, and the only registered device in use was my television. That left me perplexed. Without a definite answer, I tried brainstorming my own. Maybe my TV was turning on when I fell asleep and would continue playing Netflix until it eventually shut itself off on its own? Or maybe I was sleep binging? I mean, if other people could walk and eat in their sleep, watching TV doesn't sound so far-fetched. I would have been perfectly satisfied with this theory if it weren't for what happened next. The following week, I wasn't feeling very well, so I left work early in the afternoon. I walked into my apartment to find my television was on, Netflix was open, and my dirty clothes from my hamper were strewn about my bathroom floor. Someone had broken into my apartment. I quickly called the police and after a short walkthrough, realized nothing had been stolen. Strangely enough, there was no sign of forced entry either. They suspected the culprit didn't have time to finish the robbery as I scared them away with my unusual return. Without any clues or evidence, there was nothing the police could do for me, but they did suggest I set up a hidden security camera for if this happened again, which they hinted was very likely. And I am so glad I did. The footage was saved on an SD card, but it would also stream a live feed to my phone. The next day, at the end of my workday, my phone received a motion detection alert from my camera. I felt triumphant knowing I would now have proof to show the police and this person would be held accountable. Accessing the live feed, what I saw made my stomach churn. On the screen, I saw my apartment manager, who lived in the apartment above me, walking around my living room in my underwear. Horrified, I kept watching as he sucked on my toothbrush as he sat on my couch watching Netflix. A few minutes later, he stood up, took off my clothing, and put everything back in its place before leaving out my front door. I drove straight to the police station and showed them the video. After investigating, it was uncovered my apartment manager had been using a copy of my key to enter my apartment. While it started right after my breakup, he had been spying on me through the vents in the ceiling for months before then. Even though I got a restraining order and he was fired, I ended my lease early and won't ever consider renting an apartment again. I still hold my breath every time I log into my Netflix account, half expecting to see a new series in my recently watched.